Welcome to Cosmic Scene with Jill Jardine. I'm your host, Jill Jardine, Master's in Counseling Psychology, longtime professional astrologer, psychic, healer, and yogi. In this episode, I'm going to discuss the major planetary retrogrades from September through December 2025 and what it means for all of us. Welcome to the episode on major planetary retrogrades during September through December 2025. Listen up, because you will be personally affected if a major planet is retrograding in your sign. Planets traveling retrograde, or what looks like reverse motion astronomically, is a common phenomenon in astrology. Astrologically, a retrograde is when a planet travels backward through a zodiacal sign. Since retrograde motion is so radically different than the norm, it's not a surprise that many people often experience it as disruptive. Retrograde planets change our perception, direction, attitude, and trajectory. When a planet passes the Earth in its orbit, or vice versa, it is said to be going retrograde. From our vantage point on Earth, it's almost as if the planet is moving in reverse. This is an illusion, but it's a bit like two trains passing at different speeds. One appears to be going backwards. When planets travel retrograde, it's a good time to practice the re words related to the archetypal energies of a specific planet. For example, when Venus is retrograde, it's a good time to look at your relationship life and past patterns that aren't healthy. Sometimes exes will show up or try to contact us. Reviewing past relationships and realizing what our patterns are in partnerships, such as codependence or confrontation avoidance, are not healthy for future connections. So during planetary retrogrades, we implement all those RE words such as review, revisit, reassess, reestablish, reunite, reconnect, research, realize. Retrogrades may not be the best time to begin something new, but they can be good for tying up loose ends or giving a waylaid project a second chance to succeed. Retrogrades are periods of reassessment and redoing. They frequently deal with the past, so things, situations, and even people from the past can reappear. It's a time to slow down, do some personal reflection, and review the trajectory we've been on. By making an effort to check ourselves and learn from our past during a retrograde, we can move forward with more clarity and confidence once it's done. During retrogrades, issues that we've tried to bury or ignore could come back to the surface to haunt us, forcing us to deal with them and find some resolution. Even situations that we thought were finished could bubble up again in some way, requiring us to come to new conclusions or learn lessons. You may notice that during certain retrogrades, you have a tendency to hit roadblocks on projects, run into issues with relationships, or face personal crisis and confusion. Think of these struggles as the universe's way of helping you learn from mistakes and get in touch with yourself before charging forward on new endeavors. So, the question becomes, what does each retrograde planet mean for us? When planets go retrograde, entire populations will experience the re aspect of the planet, meaning revisiting a situation personally or collectively. Each of the planets in astrology rules over a different part of our lives. It's within these parts of our life that we'll experience the retrograde-fueled effects while a planet is back spinning. Every planet's retrograde is something different to teach us, and they offer us opportunities to pause so we can review our decisions, assess where we're at, and make adjustments before moving forward again. So I'm only going to mention the retrogrades that are relevant, that are going to be happening between September through December 2025. So we will have a Mercury retrograde in November. I'll give more specifics about that later in the broadcast, but Mercury retrograde, everybody seems to know about Mercury retrograde these days, but what's the technical information? Well, Mercury retrogrades 24 days at a time, 3 to 4 times a year. Mercury is the planet of communication, thinking, timing, and technology. Its retrogrades can cause all sorts of mix-ups, scheduling snags, and tech glitches. Mercury retrogrades 3 or 4 times a year for about 3 weeks at a time. And if you are a Sagittarius or Scorpio, you're going to be affected in that Mercury retrograde that happens in November 2025. But Geminis and Virgos are usually always affected by Mercury retrograde because they're ruled by that planet. And so they will always feel Mercury retrogrades. We're not going to be having a Venus or Mars retrograde, so we're going to skip that. But we'll be having a Jupiter retrograde later in November of 2025. So when there's a Jupiter retrograde, Jupiter is the planet of growth and expansion. So its retrogrades relate to our personal evolution. Jupiter retrograde can limit our reach and scope and also may pop the balloon of something that was expanding too fast and too big. Jupiter backspins once a year for 120 days at a time. The signs that Jupiter retrogrades, in this case Cancer this year in 2025 into 2026, as well as Sagittarius, are impacted by Jupiter retrograde cycles. That's because Jupiter rules the sign of Sagittarius. Now, we are in a Saturn retrograde in the last trimester of 2025. Saturn went retrograde on September 1st, 2025. I'll give more specifics later in the program. But when Saturn goes retrograde, it's the planet of rules and restrictions, so it's going to affect our sense of responsibility. When Saturn retrogrades, societal dictates and rules can be reversed. When rules or edicts are enforced while Saturn is retrograde, they won't stick. I like to say when Saturn's retrograde, what is done can be undone. Saturn backspins once a year for 140 days. The sign that Saturn retrogrades through, as well as Capricorns, who are the sign ruled by Saturn, will be affected. And in the fall of 2025, Saturn retrogrades into Pisces. Uranus retrograde. We're going to have a Uranus retrograde that starts on September 6th. Uranus is the planet of chaos and unexpected shifts. So its retrogrades subtly affect the way we process sudden change in our lives. It is a transpersonal or collective planet, meaning when it retrogrades, groups of people might be affected by a significant event that occurs during the retrograde cycle. Uranus retrogrades once a year for about 5 months at a time. Those with the sun sign Uranus is transiting through, as well as Aquarians, will be impacted by Uranus retrograde cycle, as Uranus rules the sign Aquarius, and it's going retrograde through the signs of Gemini and Taurus at the end of 2025 through early 2026. So heads up. Then Neptune retrograde, another outer planet. We will be experiencing a Neptune retrograde at the end of 2025, the last few months into early 2026. Neptune is the planet of dreams and illusions. So its retrogrades subtly affect the way we perceive our realities. Neptune is a transpersonal planet that can affect groups of people when it retrogrades, sometimes waking populations out of a collective illusion being perpetuated by the media, government, or those in power. Neptune backspins once a year for about 5 months at a time. When Neptune retrogrades, the sign Neptune is transiting through, and the sign Pisces, which Neptune rules, will be affected. In the current case, Neptune will be retrograding through the sign Aries and then going back through its own sign Pisces. So Pisces will be feeling it strongly. And then the most outer planet, Pluto. When Pluto is retrograde, all right, it goes for a while. Watch out. Your psyche is being rebooted and recalibrated. Pluto is the planet of transformation, so it retrogrades subtly affect our relationship to slow-moving changes taking place in society. Pluto retrograde allows time for a population to integrate big shifts in situations and consciousness. Sometimes groups of people will wake up to the power plays that the governments, the leaders, the military, the media, or other groups who hold power have implemented in a population. Pluto backspins once a year for about 5 months at a time. When Pluto retrogrades, those born during the sign it is retrograding through and Scorpios who are naturally ruled by Pluto are impacted. And this year, 2025, Pluto is retrograding through the sign Aquarius. So heads up, Aquarians. Now, let me discuss these current planetary retrograde cycles we are experiencing from September through December 2025. Pluto retrogrades from May 4th through October 13th, 2025, in the sign of Aquarius for roughly 162 days or 5 months. On May 4th, Pluto went retrograde at 3 degrees Aquarius. And the retrograde ends when Pluto turns direct at 1 degree Aquarius on October 13th, 2025. So this retrograde is affecting early degree Aquarians, those born between January 20th and 25. Hello, it's been sitting on my natal sun. And then the early degrees of air signs, Gemini, between May 20th to 25th, and early degrees Libra, September 21st to 25th. And actually, it's all about transformation, so it's not a bad thing. Just leave your ego at the door and you'll be fine. But everyone has those degrees of Aquarius located somewhere in their natal chart, and that area needs to be revisited, revised, purged, and purified while Pluto's retrograde. Interestingly, this is the first year Pluto begins and ends its retrograde entirely with Aquarius. In the past couple years, it would go Pluto, retrograde in Aquarius, back to Capricorn, and then forward in Capricorn. So this is very powerful that the entire retrograde will be in early degrees Aquarius. Pluto retrograde in Aquarius emphasizes collective and technological transformation, urging us to reconsider innovation, social structures, and how power operates in community. In other words, perhaps the people will become the power.
Hallelujah!
In this Pluto retrograde, standing up to anything that's being imposed or enforced upon them. Get ready. It cultivates a time for radical introspection and societal redefinition. Pluto retrograde brings up the dark underbelly of death, violence, abuse, control agendas, and all the wrongdoings in society, especially by those in power. In an individual's chart, when transiting Pluto retrogrades and aspects a natal planet, it can bring unexpected and deep health issues. And we're talking physical, psychological, mental health. Personally, it affects people's subconscious and can bring up shadow content from one's psyche and from the collective unconscious. There can be an uptick in violence when Pluto retrogrades, triggering other planetary aspects, or when it is getting ready to station direct. So it's already been retrograde since May 4th. It's around mid-October that we have to watch and see what's showing up. Pluto is like the Vedic archetype Shiva, the destroyer, breaking things down, releasing all that no longer serves, and stirring up the cauldron of transmutation and transformation. As with all retrogrades, it's good to do inner work in that area of your chart. For example, if Pluto is transiting your first house of self, do some deep self inner work. If it is transiting your second house of resources, do some work on self-worth and what you value. This period encourages shadow work, which means facing buried fears, hidden patterns, and unresolved issues, especially around power, control, and transformation, so that you can heal it and you can rebirth yourself. All fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, are activated during this time, especially those with the placements in the early degree. So, in other words, if you're born in the beginning of Taurus, that would be the April Taurians, beginning of Leo, the July Leos, the beginning of Scorpio, the October Scorpios, and the beginning of Aquarius, the January Aquarius, You're feeling Pluto's power, and you might experience intensified personal or spiritual shifts. Taurus, it's a good time to review career direction and align ambitions with your personal authenticity. Leo, realign your relationships and purge those that are demanding too much while giving value to those people who actually support you. Scorpio, explore family roots, ancestral patterns, and emotional foundations. Aquarius, reinvent your identity, explore spiritual healing, and release outdated versions of self. For all signs under Pluto retrograde, confront shadow dynamics, reclaim self power, and initiate inner transformation. Some acts you can do during Pluto retrograde: meditate, journal, actually get some therapy to process deeper emotions, subconscious patterns, reevaluate your relationship with technology, community, and societal expectations, and figure out what really serves you, not what society wants you to do. And then, as Pluto gets ready to move direct in mid October, set some intentions for what you want to see changing in your personal world and the world out there. The next major planet that went retrograde in 2025 was Saturn. Saturn retrogrades in Aries and goes back to Pisces. Saturn stationed retrograde on July 13th, 2025, and goes direct on November 27th. It went back into Pisces retrograde on September 1st, where it will stay until November 27th retrograde, when it goes direct on the 27th. Saturn governs structure, discipline, karmic lessons, and long-term commitments. Its retrograde invites introspection, reevaluation, and internal realignment rather than going forward. Saturn naturally rules boundaries, limits, responsibilities, discipline, and authority. Saturn is considered the karmic lord in astrology, so sometimes we can see karma come home to roost during its retrograde. Whoever thinks they may have the last laugh
No, I don't think so.
could be duped during a Saturn retrograde. Also, as I mentioned with Pluto retrograde, what is done can be undone with Saturn retrograde, including laws and other mandates that courts or governments are trying to impose on a population. Also, health issues that one might have thought went away can reappear under Saturn retrograde. In one's personal life, Saturn retrograde can help one go back and review plans, revisit structures they want to implement in their lives, and maybe redo plans that can be launched when Saturn goes direct. During any Saturn retrograde cycle, we may get a momentary reprieve from the typical effects of Saturn transits, which may include pressure and a cessation of burden, fear, or frustration. Saturn retrograde can take the pressure off. Similar to all retrograde transits, Saturn's retrograde periods are excellent for reviewing what we have learned thus far from the Saturn transit and focus on continuous improvement. Saturn retrograde periods are also ideal for revisiting form or structure and understanding how something may best be built to stand the test of time. So we have Saturn currently going retrograde at the end of 2025 in Aries from July 13th to September 1st, which encouraged reflection on personal leadership, identity, courage, and self-assertion. And it was also a time for people to reassess their authority and look at the use and abuse of authority in our world. Then Saturn went retrograde in Pisces September 1st through November 27th, bringing shifts focusing on boundaries, emotional wherewithal, creativity, faith. It encourages a review of spiritual practices, intuitive energy, and other spiritual practices. So, interestingly enough, in September, there's also the eclipse season and other planetary retrogrades, magnifying Saturn's demand for realignment and personal integrity. So, during Saturn retrograde, Evaluate your commitments, projects, roles, relationships. Do they work with you? When Saturn retrogrades in Pisces, the planet of discipline, karma, and responsibility, in Pisces realms of dreams, spirituality, illusion, and compassion, there can be some review of boundaries with other people. What's real? What's fantasy? What's fake shaman new age? And what's been grounded in practice? Saturn asks, what visions, ideals, or spiritual paths are worth grounding? And guess what? They all have to be grounded on the planet at this time. No more air. Fairy. And maybe start a discipline such as a meditation, healing practice, creative work. Look at those hidden emotions and escapist tendencies under Saturn retrograde in Pisces. And it's time to review everything. Karmic review, where Pisces rules unseen ancestral patterns, collective unconscious, spiritual contracts. What is it that we owe as a karmic debt? What's the lesson? We cannot do spiritual bypass anymore on this planet. You got to feel it to heal it. So, some of the signs that are going to be the most affected by Saturn retrograde in Pisces are Pisces and Virgo. You're it. And you're also getting slammed by the eclipses in September. So, you're going to probably have to face karmic lessons around identity, relationships, and health. Gemini and Sag, there could be some shifts in your home, your career, and long-term goals. And Aries and Aquarius, you're continually restructuring your identity and looking at finances, issues of self-worth. Hey, Cosmic Scene listeners, Jill Jardine here, and I've got something out of this world to share with you. Introducing the Cosmic Tower, a revolutionary energy harmonizing device designed to uplift your space, restore vitality, and bring coherence to your life. It's like plugging into the cosmos right from your living room. These towers are transforming homes, clearing EMFs, and awakening higher frequencies. And now you can experience it for yourself. I recently received my very own Cosmic Tower, and the experience has been truly magical. I've been feeling drained from work with physical pain flaring up, but within 2 hours of setting up the tower, my energy returned, my spirit lifted, and I felt ready for life again. I am so excited to be living with the Cosmic Tower and want you to learn more about it too. So check out thewellnessenterprise.com and tap into the frequency of the future. And guess what? If you use the code COSMIC10, that's capital COSMIC, all capitals, 10, Cosmic 10 at checkout for 10% off your own Cosmic Tower. Then Neptune has been retrograding in the sign Aries and Pisces since July 4th, 2025. And then we'll backtrack into Pisces from October 22nd to December 10th. So Neptune re-enters its home sign Pisces on October 22nd, 2025, returning to its core themes of intuition, dreams, and spirituality. Key dates of this retrograde are around October 22nd, Neptune shifting retrograde back into Pisces, and December 10th when Neptune stations direct, concluding the cycle. Neptune's retrograde invites us to strip away illusions, reevaluate ideas, and connect with deeper truth. Expect blurred boundaries, heightened intuition, and a time to confront what has been occluded or blocked. When Neptune goes retrograde, it helps to integrate our dreams and visions. We find out where we have deluded ourselves. Where in life are we wearing those rose-colored glasses of illusion? And where have we been led down the garden path? Neptune retrograde is a good time for deep spiritual practices and connecting with Source. Meditation and spiritual retreats are enhanced, and get away from the mundane and pursue something creative. So when Neptune retrogrades in Aries from July 4th to October 22nd, 2025, it's a rare event. It last occurred in the 19th century that turns Neptune's dreamy energy towards self-identity, ambition, and assertion. Encourages reevaluation of impulsive dreams. Are you truly following your calling or just chasing shadows? The Aries energy fuels action, so pairing reflective work with somatic practices like yoga, breath work, and movement can be powerful. Neptune retrograde in its home sign Pisces is a good time to revisit creative projects or spiritual practices with a clearer view. Do any kind of work, such as meditating and dream work and journaling. There could be more of a collective interest in spirituality, mysticism, and healing practice, but they also demand discernment between real wisdom, fake shamanism, and escapism. And we may be revisiting collective wounds, such as sexual abuse perpetuated by those in power, making the abusers accountable. Sexual abuse victims coming forward, and Neptune also represents the collective unconscious, so retrograde periods often bring up ancestral patterns, cultural shadows, or collective grief that society must acknowledge, such as the continuing collective denial of child sex trafficking. Because Pisces is a water sign, there could be issues around water, such as flooding, inundations, situations with the oceans. So we'll have to be aware of that in the fall of 2025. The other planet that will go retrograde and be retrograde during this time is Uranus retrograde in Gemini from September 6, 2025 through November 7th, when it then retrogrades back into Taurus until February 3rd, 2026. The Gemini retrograde cycle is revealing around communication, ideas, and narratives. The retrograde in Taurus revisits issues around values, stability, resources, and security. This retrograde cycle affects Geminis, Aquarians, and Taurians. Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. Uranus is the great awakener, and when he goes retrograde, this is a time of integration. Usually there are revelations or shifts in consciousness right before Uranus transits retrograde. Uranus will bring breakthroughs and breakdowns. Uranus urges change and doesn't want us to rest on our laurels. During Uranus retrograde, we can figure out how to implement changes in our lives and society. There will be powerful wake-up calls, and necessary change is inevitable. Also, for individuals who have strong Uranian signatures in their natal chart, unexpected health issues can be revealed. So, with Uranus's retrograde, we're going from outward shocks to internal focus. The revolution occurs within our hearts, minds, and daily habits rather than in external events. September to November's retrograde in Gemini prompts reflection on how information, narratives, and beliefs shape us. When Uranus goes retrograde in Taurus from November to February 2026, we're going to recalibrate our values and stability. So we're going to look at attachments to material security, comfort, and tradition. This phase may expose where societal systems and personal resources have grown outdated or are resistant to change. So overall, there's going to be themes of realignment and disruption, realigning our notion of security with authenticity over stability, balance internal change with external chaos. The overarching mood is reflection, rebellion, and an urge to realign values and beliefs with evolutionary growth, rather than merely maintaining the status quo. And then we have Jupiter retrograde. Jupiter retrogrades in Cancer on November 11th, 2025, and is retrograde all the way until March 10th, 2026, a span of 3 months and 27 days. Jupiter is the great benefic in astrology, bringing blessings, knowledge, abundance, good luck, and wisdom. Jupiter signifies the inner or outer guru or teacher. Jupiter expands consciousness, bringing new experiences and allowing us to journey inwardly or outwardly to new areas of life or far horizons. When Jupiter travels retrograde, we will see shifts in religions and governments. So, under Jupiter retrograde, we can see revisions made in government policies and reversals and abuses of those in power or religious leaders or cults. There can be revelations of abuses by church leaders or government leaders. Aww. Jupiter retrograde in Cancer urges us to re-examine what truly feels comforting, secure, and meaningful at our inner core. We're looking at our inner security. How do we find security in our home, in our personal spaces? And so Unlike Jupiter's usual exuberance, this is a time to nurture our dreams gently inwardly. So during Jupiter retrograde, people are reevaluating home, family, emotional roots. What can you do differently with that? Look at your ancestral dysfunctions and your family dysfunctions and see if you can heal them. And so with Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, it's about rebuilding from the inside. Find a way to nurture yourself or let yourself be nurtured in new ways that really are authentic to you. And then the last retrograde we have in 2025 is a Mercury retrograde that goes from November 9th to 29th. And it comes in two phases. The first phase is the Sagittarius Mercury retrograde from November 9th to 18th. And then we're going to have the Scorpionic Mercury retrograde from November 18th to 29th. And they're marked by very different energies. When Mercury retrogrades in Sagittarius, which governs truth-seeking, philosophies, and big picture thinking, we're going to see some misunderstandings around beliefs, overheard opinions, misstatements, false news, false statements in social and public discourse. And people will say things that's just a bunch of BS. And then they'll be called on it during the Mercury retrograde. In the Scorpio phase, from November 18th to 29, Mercury in Scorpio gets kind of dark. Secrets will be revealed. There'll be hidden motives. People's cheating, lying, and all their other dark energies will come to the surface. We're going to see so many power dynamics that went wrong. So in the collective, this Mercury retrograde, which also overlaps with Thanksgiving, a season prone to family dynamics, there could certainly be travel problems and heightened emotions. Expect communication challenges, travel delays, and tech hiccups. So it's going to be a veritable mercurial retro shit show. On the upside, it's a time ripe for review, revision, and reconciliation. And it's going to be all about truth versus fact. So we're going to see a lot of bullshit come to the surface as well. Get ready, because it's a power-packed Mercury retrograde. And as usual, Mercury retrograde will breed some level of confusion. People are going to probably be arguing more than this, holding on to what they think is right and truth. So it's going to be cray-cray in November. Expect the delays and challenges that come with Mercury retrograde. Watch your money. Don't spend carelessly. Remember, though, Mercury retrograde is great for reorganizing and reflecting. Mercury retrograde periods can be times of heightened inner awareness when meditation, benefiting from keeping a journal, reworking old plans, and reviewing past work are favored. Mercury retrograde is really good to go within. Find your zen within, because it's going to be a chaotic shit show without. And that's all, folks, for the retrograde planets. I hope you enjoyed this episode on the retrograde planets in 2025. Make sure you download, subscribe, share, and give us a 5-star review. This is Cosmic Scene with Jill Jardine signing out, sending you retro, redux, healing energies through the quantum field.